So we have a few less organizers this morning, but I will do double duty in introducing everybody and also doing the introduction of 1 Million Cups. So Gabby, if you can just keep letting people in while I'm doing the presentation, that'd be great. All right, well, everyone, welcome to 1 Million Cups Westminster. I am Graham Dodds, the Executive Director of Magic, our community sponsor who does workforce education, startup ecosystem building here in Westminster, Maryland. We have our coffee sponsor as well, who is Furnace Hills Coffee. I will post the link here for you guys to get 25% off your entire order of coffee from Furnace Hills. Normally, when 1 Million Cups is not happening during a pandemic, it's live, it's face-to-face, and there's plenty of coffee on hand. And usually that's provided by your coffee sponsor. So instead, we're doing this online discount. So if you go to furnacehillscoffee.com, you type in discount code 1MC Westminster, you get 25% off your entire order. So that's in the chat there for you guys. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now and just do a quick introduction of what 1 Million Cups is for those of you who aren't familiar. And then we'll get right to our presentations. So let's see here. I'm sharing my screen. And okay, great. So 1 Million Cups, the mission of 1 Million Cups is to lower the barrier for access to education, resources, and connections for entrepreneurs. There's about 170 of these that happen every Wednesday morning throughout the country. And it's a function of the Kauffman Foundation, which is I think probably the world's largest philanthropic organization just dedicated to supporting entrepreneurship. They're based in Kansas City, in case you didn't know. Our pillars of the program, we have these core values and pillars that our mission doesn't get accomplished without. The pillars are that these are presentations, not pitches, that this is for connection, not networking, that this is about building culture for the community, by the community. Nobody has ownership, even though we have community sponsors and coffee sponsors. These are not people that run the program. This is actually just the community trying to come together to produce it. So nobody actually owns 1 Million Cups. And then no one's paid to do 1 Million Cups. It's all volunteer driven. And our goal is to also be radically and intentionally inclusive. Our core program is that it's every week, Wednesdays at 9 a.m., 2 presenters when possible. Presenters organizations must be less than 5 years old, but there's some wiggle room there. So if you know a company that's been around for more than 5 years, but they're still trying to accelerate their growth, they're still a good candidate for 1 Million Cups. And we always end with the question after our Q&A of what can we as a community do to help you. These are my fellow organizers: Russ Hammett, who runs the actual Zoom call itself, Val Giovanni from Ting, Jonathan Wheatman, who's a local attorney at law, also runs the Entrepreneur Store in 140. Nick Mancuso, a local game developer. Julia Snap, who has a startup called Dirigible Systems, does fog edge computing, and Andrew Rose from Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit. So that is that. Let me stop sharing now. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in with our first presenter, Mel Brennan, who is from CitizenLife. Mel, go ahead, share your screen, and everybody else, please go on mute. Mel, you'll have about 6 minutes, give or take a few minutes, however much time you really need, but I'll give you like a 1 minute warning when you get close to 6 minutes, and then we'll do a 20-minute Q&A following that. So go ahead and share your screen if you have a presentation, and take it away.
Graham, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody's time this morning. I want to begin and end my portion of the presentation with gratitude, just thankful. None of you had to be here at all this morning doing any of this, and yet you're here, and we're engaged in some of this cultural content building and with a focus on our town, Westminster, so I appreciate it. The story of me, really quick, is I've never built a viable business of my own before. think it's important to say, but I built a few for others. And I say that literally with the idea of local to global, whether it's these entities which were high stakes in Times Square or high value globally, or the last 15 years with focusing on vulnerable populations, leading in the C-suite with these various organizations or engaged in these various endeavors. I've come across a lot of different folks that cut across a lot of different lines of difference, class, race, experience, and a lot of them are expressing the same frustrations. And over the last 15 years, that's encouraged me to ask a very particular set of questions around citizenship, our take on citizenship, our differentiation between citizenship and civics, which are not the same thing. And they're distilled down to two questions. And I've put my wallet on the line over the last 15 years with regard to these questions, right? So I've literally said to folks in gatherings of all sizes, and I'll say it here today, that I'm willing to give you everything that's in my wallet, and don't get excited because it's not a lot. But I'm willing to give you everything that's in my wallet if you can give me a great answer to the next two questions. Can you name your elected representatives, local to global, and what they did yesterday? And I can tell you that in 15 years, I've kept all my money. But I haven't come across anybody who can answer those two questions completely. The vast majority of the time, people don't even try. And in a democratic republic, lowercase d, lowercase r, like our own, in 15 years, in a variety of settings, across a variety of communities, when we can't answer that question, that's a problem. That's a problem. It's a problem of what? Well, the story of us is it's a problem and a story of citizen capital, right? It's the idea of, and you talked about it in the story of 1 million cups, it's the idea of barriers to goals. And when you have low citizen capital, you fall at the very first barrier. And when you have high citizen capital, you can move around those barriers. So whether the barriers are access to your representatives, timeliness of understanding the information and the situations that they're engaged with, timeliness of understanding bills, whether it's decoding of bills, right? They're very often written in language that subverts understanding as opposed to fomenting understanding. Or whether it's the idea of force multiplication, right? Being able to take the information that you have with regard to your representative bills and rally with others instead of being isolated. Very often when we're isolated, we fall at the very first or second barrier. We never even get a chance to get to our goal. We have low citizen capital. Folks with high citizen capital go right around those. And what the research tells us is that typically, if you have low citizen capital, it stays low across your life. And if you have high citizen capital, it stays high across your life, right? CitizenLife is here to subvert that whole framework, right? Again, this is an idea 14 years in the making, but it's relatively simple. CitizenLife is trying to do a few things. One is to make it very easy to register to vote. Lots of sites are doing that. It's very easy. We want to participate in that. The other one is to be able to find your reps very quickly. There are a few sites that are doing that, but not with the aggregate of information we're trying to put together. The third thing is to understand your reps' work week, their schedule, what they did last week, how that ties together with the bills that they're working on. The fourth is to decode bills. Another feature is to declare your personal platform. So to separate citizen life from non-constitutional factionalism around political parties and their platform, but what's your personal platform, right? And to ask some basic and then some detailed questions with regard to that, so that you can then connect with others who are thinking similarly or engage with others who might be thinking differently. The tribes that we're looking at to start with this work are the wonks, the folks that are just interested in political discourse, right? And are looking for a refined tool, a one-stop shop that brings some of these things together. The other tribe is what I'm calling the cusps, the folks that are on the cusp of engaging this type of stuff, who say regularly, well, if there was a place to go, this is exactly and precisely what I'd be doing with a portion of my time, right? And then the third one, interestingly enough, is actually active non-voters. The Ipsos NPR data that we have over the past 2 elections tells us that one major reason for non-voting and a lack of engagement is the absence of a simple, elegant, robust place to get this information. So people feel like they don't have enough information, so they don't participate. We're going after those three tribes. The competition, and I put that in quotes because when we say competition, there's some truths about that. The other places where you can get some of this information lack simplicity, and there are some assumptions about it that people make, right? So very often, not very often, but occasionally when I say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing, people say, well, there's other places to get your reps. That's true, but there's not another place to go where you can get your reps in what they were doing yesterday, or necessarily all the engagement around their connectivity. Great examples are USA.gov, right? If I go and want to look municipally, at the municipal level, at my mayor and find out who my mayor is, and I click on the mayor search, there's some towns in there, but Westminster isn't one of them, right? In fact, 80% of towns are not in that space. If I do a county search, I get factoids, right? I don't get who my county representatives are, how to engage them, and what they did yesterday. At house.gov, there's a two-step process there and this is our federal website, right? And most of the time, what you get connected to is the representative's brand page, right? The way in which they want to present themselves from a marketing standpoint, right? JamieRaskin.gov, right? Like his brand page, versus the idea of understanding how to connect with this person and what they did yesterday, what they did this week, what bills are they working on, who those bills benefit, who was made or kept harmed or vulnerable by those bills, right? OpenStates.org, the same thing. It's important for me to really define citizenship so that the basis and the point of view of citizen life is expressed here as well, right? I'm thinking of citizenship as being possessed of authentic and actionable information. Those two things are indispensable to this definition. To engage democratically, right? The idea of reflective of the interests, hopes, concerns, expectations, and aspirations of most of us most of the time, while in each instance keeping track of the humanity of the most vulnerable, right? That's a cultural content piece, and that's a particular point of view that is replete within the construction and vision of citizen life. And the argument is that the current tools that we see out in the landscape and the mediascape are insufficient to task. Right? So I envision citizen life as a freemium model, right? That some of the basics, registering to vote, finding your reps, some of those things are free. The access to that would be free to me as a website and portal builder. So I think they ought to be free to people, right? Just aggregated in a smart and intelligent way. The Google Civic Information API has been integrated into Citizen Life, and it services federal, state, and some county information in a meaningful way. But the municipal information is entirely lacking. The Declare Your Platform piece on the basic level, the 10 questionnaire, should be free as well. But the stuff that's in blue, I think would be premium in the current formulation and thinking around citizen life. All right. So you get who your representatives are, what they did at the federal, state, and county level, and the ability to declare your platform and connect at a basic level. And then the premium piece would be in blue. But whether it's the basic formulation or the premium formulation, a good portion of these barriers are engaged, right? So with the current model for citizen life, we're talking about, are we engaging our ability to access our reps? Yes. Are we engaging timelines? Yes. Are we seeking to decode? Yes. And are we allowing people to connect? Yes, that force multiplier. In moving to 1.0, right now, if you go to citizenlife.org, you'll see a version that I call 0.3. And to move to 1.0, we really need to dive into, we've had the Civic Information API integrated. If you go to the Find Your Rep section, you'll find that you can get that federal, state, and county information. It doesn't look exactly like I'd like it to look, but we're getting there. But the municipal piece is key. And the focus going forward, 1.0 for me is defined as being able to deliver an entire vertical slice, local to global, with a focus on Westminster, Maryland as the proof of concept and the tribing opportunity. Right? So here, for me, I want to focus in on the municipal information and rigorous methodologies to get that in there. It's not going to be a plug and play API as I understand the current environment. I might be ignorant. My wife says I'm wrong on average about 15 times a day, so I could be wrong on that too. but right now, that's work that needs to be done. And then, the advanced algorithm around the declare your platform piece has to be developed. And I want to continue to simplify the design. I think it's very important to have a one-click sensibility across the platform to make it very easy. Find your reps, you click, you go, and you're moving through authentic and actionable information. So it's amplifying the clean design of Squarespace where we are now, and or considering other platforms. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We can talk about this in the questions section. And I know I'm at time, pretty close to time. So I wanted to finish the way I started, which is in gratitude, very thankful for the opportunity to dialogue about citizen life. Again, this has been something that has been percolating for the past 15 years for me, 16 years for me. And in the past year, the COVID and global crisis environment has been an opportunity for me to actually step back, take some time and get this concept out on the ground and actionable in a way that you can now visit it at citizenlife.org. But we want to amplify and really move forward. So thank you.
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Mel. So, we have some questions right off the bat. Tamar Osterman from Maryland Economic Development says, in a democracy, you get the government you deserve. Do you have any response to that comment, Mel? I assume you feel strongly about that.
I think that's, yes, I would add a corollary to that, right? And so the corollary to that, the Shakespearean couplet, right, to that would be, and the more we know, the more we can forge, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point, and my other favorite phrase is, real democracy is not a spectator sport, which your presentation is, working to facilitate. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, even in the educational system. I remember my son had a powerful first grade teacher. My oldest son had a powerful first grade teacher, really, really great teacher. Is a great teacher to this day. And one of the things that I asked her was, could we reconfigure the use of homeroom? Can you imagine going from first to 12th grade and just having a touch in homeroom around your representatives and what they did, and how that would culturally institute the idea of how this is important? And at the time, No Child Left Behind really seemed to hem her in as to what she could do and the things that we could engage on. But yet then my son got a bespoke, customized economics unit that taught him to be a consumer. And I said, well, one, you don't need to teach my kid to be a consumer. I don't think you need to teach most kids to be a consumer. You're going to talk to my kid about economics, talk to them about ownership and entrepreneurship. But two, that was a decision, right? It was a decision that we could emphasize that, but not emphasize citizenship. And so, yeah, we have some decisions to make. And I think it's difficult to have an educational process that runs K through 12 where we don't emphasize citizenship and then say, oh, you're 18, why haven't you turned this light switch on in your life? Right?
There's a growing recognition among many parties that we need to reinvigorate citizenship in the curriculum, and from the last election, and I think a lot of people are very shocked by how little people really understood about the way our democracy works.
Yeah, I agree, right? And some of the way it works is constitutional and some of it is very non-constitutional, right? It's not necessarily against the Constitution, but it is sort of outside of it. And I'm trying to focus in on, just the real bare bones and basics, because I think an emphasis on that actually strengthens us across the board. So my goal, if you go now to Citizen Life and you look at find your reps, you put your address in and you surface your reps, it'll tell you who your reps are, but it also references political party. I'm actually uninterested in that. I'm not interested in the political party at all, right? Factions were left out of the Constitution for a reason, right? They come and go, they ebb and flow. What's important is to understand what your representative actually did, to know your personal platform and where you stand on various important issues of the day, and understand how your representative aligns with that, doesn't align with that, and what bills are being passed and who's empowered and who's made vulnerable, right? That type of stuff is important. The other stuff serves the political parties, but I'm not sure if it serves us, right? So I'm trying to stay out of that particular set of factionalism, not because I'm necessarily neutral. I am definitively not neutral. But I also think that the factionalism obscures the idea that we can take citizen action in a lot of different ways. You know, my father-in-law is 83, and he said, you know, the conversations that he's had with me over the past year reminded him that he can engage his representatives anytime he wants and call them about things and have things move on the basis of that engagement. And sometimes we forget that. All right,
So Mel, I had a question here about who are the customers of your product, right? You had the freemium premium model for people who want access to certain features, but could you monetize the data potentially and the customer segmentation that you would be creating to the politicians themselves? Is that something you've thought about?
I haven't thought about that. I think that type of stuff has to be on the table as we think about the viability of the platform, particularly because I think you're going to have a lot of, just to be frank, you're going to have a meaningful labor component as you start talking about getting data at the municipal level, right? I would love for a silver bullet API to come across to be surfacing municipal data across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And for all of our municipalities to be fully engaged in that. But until that mystical, magic, majestic day, you're going to have individuals who do that, and individuals need to be paid. And so as a result of that, everything I think needs to be on the table with regard to the monetization of content. Now, I say all that to say that, you know, conflict of interest manifests in a couple different ways. One is actual conflict of interest, and the other one are perceived ones, right? And so we have to pay attention to that as well. But you know, the idea of at this point in the project, any of that being off the table for me wouldn't make sense. So yeah, I haven't thought about that particular one. I'm taking robust notes, and my hope is that I can save the chat.
Yes, we'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up question to that, and I'll get through the rest of them here in a minute. How have you set up your business? Is it a for-profit corporation, or is it a nonprofit, or is it a public benefit corporation?
It's a for-profit corporation.
Okay. And is it a C Corp or an LLC?
LLC. Okay. But I'd love to look at B Corp, to be frank with you.
That's why I mentioned public benefits. I figured you have that element to it. So you might want to look at like being a Delaware C Corp with the public benefit designation. That might attract certain types of investors that are looking to do impact investing with B Corps. I think there'd be a lot of investors interested in what you're doing. All right. Russ Hammett, my fellow organizer here at 1 Million Cups, has a lengthy essay here. I'm going to read through it here. It was definitely difficult to find information on several things on the ballot this last election cycle. So having something that can provide that information sounds extremely useful. If they're an incumbent, being able to see what their voting record is and how they fit into your platform, as I think you described. How do you, or can you, avoid the issue of people who dismiss information out of their inherent biases just based on the source? What I consider a good source of information, another might dismiss outright, and vice versa for their own sources of information. Obviously, all the news outlets have their own financial interests in some manner, so I'd be interested in how you strive to remain as neutral as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. All right. And that question occupied my mind for probably the first decade of just formulating this idea. How do you manage, you know, the idea of neutrality of bias? Well, I think the idea is to recognize that you're going to have a bias, but what is your bias? And my bias is to lean in on the idea of providing authentic and actionable information. And you're going to have people who will come across that axis and engage with citizen life at different points on that continuum. So if somebody comes in and says, well, I'm not sure if this is authentic, but let me test whether it's actionable, and they start engaging with their reps and they start seeing real outcomes, then you start building the trust for the authenticity. If people come in and go, oh, I immediately recognize this is authentic because it meets my biases, right? It meets my take on information. Then what you're working on then is to say, all right, now understanding that, let's take some action. So I think it's going to be, there is an opportunity to politicize citizen life from the very beginning for those who say, listen, I'm not sure if I even like the idea. I mean, I've had people tell me, I'm not sure I even like the idea of every individual being fully empowered in their citizenship. I've had people tell me that to my face. I've had people say the idea of politicians going behind closed doors is important. A lack of transparency actually sometimes gets things done. All of that may or may not be true, right? But what I do know is we have 80 million people who, even in the torrent of the last election, didn't engage at all, right? I'm not sure we can afford that. And Citizen Life is the effort to strive in the other direction, to say, let's see what it looks like when people have an opportunity to be fully engaged. I'll be frank with this group. Prior to last month, Citizen Life had a second component, a second entire section centered around curriculum. So Citizen Life was tools and curriculum. This idea of offering the freemium model, K1 and 2 curriculum for free, and then 3 through 12 curriculum. And I put that to the side because I took some advice from some folks, some entrepreneurs in our community who said, listen, the ed tech community is rapacious and very difficult, and it's going to be difficult to do both, to focus in on the tools and the curriculum. Both of those are distinct fights, right? And so instead of leaning into some arrogance and saying, well, this is the way I've thought about it for 15 years, this is what I'm going to do it, I really meditated on that and said, listen, let's take the education curriculum side and let's get the tools up first. Let's focus in on the tools. Let's really dive in on the tools. And that's what you're seeing here today. But I do think that at some point, this idea of how people are learning is important. And I think diving into expressing a neutrality along the lines of diving into, hey, our bias is that you have authentic and actual information, period. That's our bias, right? And we want to be tested on that on a regular basis, right? I think another place you're going to see that pop up, the question that's been asked pop up, is when we start decoding bills, right? If you go and look at a bill now, whether it's state or federal, very often the first 5 pages of it are, whereas the previous bill referenced in the 3rd paragraph of the 2nd section that blah, 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 blah. And then by the time you get to the 6th page, you have to take a nap, right? So a lot of the decoding will be like, hey, the first 6 pages of this is just referencing the previous bill and here are the changes. It's not necessarily providing a value on those changes, right? But it is important to be able to say, hey, this bill means to change this thing and this is who's going to benefit. It is important to be able to say, this bill is about homeless folks. These folks are vulnerable. Here's how they'll stay vulnerable. Here's how that'll change. Or, and some of that is a value statement, right? So I think that's a place where we're going to be challenged. And I think that's, but then you also can track dollars, right? Bills very often drive dollars, and you can straight up track dollars and know where resources are going and make those statements as well. So, well, there's some refinement there, and I think it's a nuanced point that has to be thought about throughout the entirety of the development process.
And we only have a minute left here, but a couple questions back to back, one from Mark Weingrim and the other from Tina Thomas of Infinite Love Project. They're both referencing other platforms. So competitively speaking, you're familiar with Issue Voter is what Mark's asking. And then Tina wants to know if you are familiar with Braver Angels, and would that be of value in terms of integrating with the work that they are doing?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Issue Voter I am familiar with. It is approaching this idea of when it's close to this idea of personal platform, right? Declaring where you are on your issues and being able to, as a result of that, see some information. We think the aggregation of what we're doing is a little bit different, but there are some similarities there. I have not heard of Braver Angels, so I'm looking forward to knowing more, definitely later tonight, about Braver Angels. And I think it would be helpful So I'm happy to dive in there.
And is there anything else that our community can do for you that hasn't been mentioned so far? Can we share Citizen Life? Can we help promote it somehow, or connect you with other resources?
I'm going to put an email, and someone's already put Citizen Life's website in the chat. I'm going to put an email in to the Citizen Life Big Dog, that's me, at gmail.com. And my hope with this group is that you'd go to the site, you'd peruse the site, you'd give me your sense of the site, what you think the strengths and weaknesses are. And based on this presentation, in terms of where I submitted I want to go, whether that makes sense to you or you think some other avenue should be prioritized in the work. That would be very, very helpful to me. Propagating Citizen Life to others, yes, with a nuanced answer there. One is that I think investment in this platform is going to be important. So if you're sharing with folks with the idea that they might invest in the platform and have a conversation around that, I'd love to talk about that. Beyond that, we're at 0.3. So when you share it, just let folks know it's not fully formed yet. We're getting to 1.0, so that they're not disappointed or have their expectations subverted and thinking that this is fully baked.
But for those of you who are here in Westminster, Mel is here too, right, Mel?
I am. I'm Ridge Road, right around the corner from the college.
So, maybe as COVID eases up, you can meet up with Mel at Genie Bird over coffee or Furnace Hills or whatever.
Absolutely. I need to take some more walks. So let's walk to Genie Bird.
Speaking of walking in the outdoors, I think this is as good of a segue as I'm going to get. Let's bring it over to Benjamin Ben Batten from Fiddler's Green Farms. Ben, go ahead and share your screen and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks. Let's see. I was trying to get this on an iPad, but was not working. Technology, always my favorite friend in the morning. Hold on here.
And I will add that Ben actually tested everything before the meeting started and was totally prepared, and I saw everything working. So
Yeah. Well, there we go. Let me get this started first. One thing at a time.
there you go.
Here we go. And we'll share that. And we'll go full. All right. So everybody can hear me, and you got the screen up right now. Hi. How's it going, everybody? My name is Ben Batten, and I play outside. I also am the managing partner at Fiddler's Green Farm here in Tawnytown, Maryland. We are a certified organic hemp farm, and we grow healing plants that build connections with the ecosystems that support us. Our focus is on organic hemp and medicinal herbs that we create into a number of CBD products. We also keep bees. This isn't advancing, but here we go. There's our hemp. We also keep bees, are growing a growing variety of small grains, and we have a growing tribe of goats. Our goal is to be a fully regenerative farm, focusing on building soil health through sustainability, diversity, and working with the natural processes of our ecosystems. So we use cover crops, no-till seeding, rotational grazing, and soon pasture cropping. Happy to talk about any of those later on. A little bit of backstory. I was never a farmer. I grew up here on our 100-acre farm that we've had in our family since 1947. But by the time I was growing up, we had started renting out all the fields to local farmers who were doing the corn, soybean, occasional wheat rotation. And I never thought much of it. I never wanted to be a farmer. I thought, why farm when you could just play on a farm? That's how I looked at it. So I left Maryland after high school and spent most of the next decade in Colorado skiing and getting a film degree. There, I was pretty much entrenched in sustainable practices and environmental activism in Boulder. That's where I went to school. And when I came back, I wanted to bring that back to Maryland. I just didn't think it would be with farming. So enter the green revolution. I know that's a loaded word. It's used in a lot of different ways, but I think of it, for me, it's going back to our roots. And I've been going through a re-education in a lot of things around here right now. And it's kind of all stemmed in our broken agricultural system. We have a system that's an industrial monoculture that is destroying our land, our water, our air, and our food. That standard corn, soybean, and occasional wheat rotation that I watched on our farm growing up relies completely on synthetic inputs, fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. All of those things are not cheap. And the more you use, the more you have to use them. So our farmers put more on the fields, it washes away because only so much is actually even taken up by the plants that we're putting them on. And now our soil is less productive while our waterways are filled with chemicals. If anybody wants to tell me that that's an okay long-term plan, I will say, no, it's not. Our agricultural systems have forgotten the quality part and are just going for quantity. Anyway, it's more, which has caused more and more consolidation of farms, pushing out small family farms. And it creates a food system that is insufficient, like food nutrition, essentially. It doesn't take a scientist to correlate the rise of our nation's healthcare costs with the degradation of our farmland. They're tied together. It's no accident. So basically, something has to change. I see farming as a force for that change if we begin switching to regenerative practices. That's keeping living roots in the ground year-round, not using pesticides, harnessing animals. A lot of people are cows and livestock get a bad rap sometimes, but it's not necessarily them. It's how we've been managing them in giant industrial complexes. It's not, agriculture is not the same as a factory. It shouldn't be looked at it like that. So our soils basically have the ability to retain carbon if we let them do what they were designed to do. When we till them up every season or multiple times in a year, we're destroying that ability. And it's one of the largest causes to our carbon influx in the spring. It's wild when you see, I don't have any of the models, but when you see the timeline of carbon levels in a year, they all spike right around this time in the spring when everyone is tilling their fields in preparation for the next crop. It's wild. When we can keep things in the soil year round, it's significantly more impactful in retaining that carbon where it should be. We can bring economies back to rural areas with focusing on regenerative agriculture. We can encourage the next generation to be involved in farming, whereas I wasn't really discouraged from farming, but it wasn't an idea for me. It didn't seem like a plausible future, honestly. We don't have that much land. It's 100 acres when you look at different farms that are thousands of acres to make a profit. So we are focusing on quality over quantity here. I chose basically to stay here to help build something that will sustain this farm and keep it in our family. But I also wanted to be a place, an example of sustainable agriculture. To do that, it needs to be profitable. But more importantly, the land needs to be productive. That means living soil, working with natural processes of our ecosystems that have evolved over millennia, like kind of harnessing what this world already does. So basically, at Fiddlers Green Farm, we're building this place to provide an alternative to the current destructive path of our agricultural system, one that is grounded in regenerative practices and humble stewardship of our ecosystems. We want to help support the local community with healing products, as well as building an example for how you can be profitable on a small acreage farm. So, like I said, growing up, I never really thought of myself as a farmer, never wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to travel, explore, meet new people, and make a difference in a big way. I finally am realizing that to make a big change, you need to start at home. And I'm loving being a part of this agricultural revival here on Fiddlers Green Farm, and want to continue to grow this certainly growing movement. We're definitely not the only ones around doing these practices, but making Maryland a bed of progressive agriculture. So this is one of my favorite books from my college times and doing some traveling, and it certainly resonates with me. So with that, that's a little overview of Fiddlers Green Farm.
Thank you very much, Ben. Great presentation. Really great photography in your slides too. And if you could unshare your screen, then we'll go back to the view for the group to see each other.
Sure.
So we have some questions right off the bat. Let's see here. Tina Thomas from Infinite Love Project wants to know, do you give educational farm tours?
Absolutely. Of course, it's by appointment at this point. And generally, even after COVID, I'm sure it will be too, just because we want to be able to dedicate that time and not be too busy while people are here. But yeah, we actually, we certainly encourage people to come out, reach out to us anytime. And goat yoga. We haven't done goat yoga yet, but my partner, Bryn, is actually she just went through yoga teacher training. So maybe in the future.
What type of goats do you have, if you don't mind me? I used to have Nigerian dwarf goats.
Oh my gosh, they are a motley crew. I'm not exactly sure of all the we don't have that many yet. We're actually, like I said, they're growing right now. There's several of them that are pregnant. So we'll have a couple of baby goats here shortly. But for a long time, they were just pets. And now we're slowly growing the tribe to help us out in the fields.
Do you have to keep
I don't exactly know the variety right now.
Will they eat the hemp though if they get close to it?
They probably would, yes. We're keeping them out of there when the plants are in the ground, but we actually bring them through beforehand to help mow down all the weeds and things and put fertilizer down.
All right, Tamar Osterman from Maryland Economic Development asks, are you familiar with Grow and Fortify, Kevin Addix's organization?
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are Kevin, Jana, they're all like super great people, and they have been very helpful. We're part of the Hemp Coalition that they put together. And we are also, involved. I've talked to them a lot about the small grain, the malting, and the distilling and brewing community, because they're all part of that as well. The Brewers Association.
And let's see, Tina Thomas asks, are you working with the University of Maryland Ag Extension Office at all?
A little bit. So our first year growing hemp was 2019, and we had to partner with a university. The University of Maryland was one, but we actually partnered with Salisbury. The extension office is involved with the University of Maryland study more than Salisbury study.
Tamar has followed up with mentioning that we have a burgeoning interest in ag tech here, and that Andrew Rose, who's one of our co-organizers for this program with Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit, is a good connection. Are you already connected with them or Andrew?
No, I don't believe so. So that would, yeah, that would be great. I mean, well, I just had a conversation with Josh Ambrose yesterday about, the industrial, the more fabrication of using hemp, and in more of a textile focus, with all the number of things that you can do with hemp, which is something that we've had to back burner for a little bit. While we're definitely new and getting started, but there's so many things you can do with it. It's just hard to process. And we would love to continue to investigate all of those things. I mean, hempcrete, insulation, fabrics. There's so many things that you can make. Bioplastics.
Daniel Schaefer from McDaniel College says, thank you for sharing. Where are you currently with distribution and sales, and where and how do folks buy your products?
So we are at farmers markets during the summer, and we'll be starting up in Westminster here soon, and I think April or May is when it starts. But we have an online store as well. So fiddlersgreen.io is our online store, and our whole webpage. But so we do online stores or sales right now. We are starting some small wholesale accounts with local retailers. We're really trying to kind of be intentional about where we're developing wholesale relationships. We'd obviously like the majority of the return on the products, but we also want to partner with our local community. So we're doing some wholesale accounts, mostly farmers markets though, honestly, and we're going to be doing a couple more this year, and doing a couple expos and events. But we're just in that point where we do it. I'm sorry. We also do some sales out of the farm. We don't necessarily have a store on the farm, but we do kind of sales by appointment as well. So if people want to come out to the farm and see it and pick up products, we have that available as well.
That's great. Yeah, we have Tamar posted Andrew Rose's email, so you have it directly there.
Great, thanks.
I'll make a warm intro for you. And then Russ Hammett also shared your link to your website for everybody. And Jennifer Young says, from Covalent Spirits, and now the entrepreneur in residence at McDaniel College, says their stuff is great. Check them out at the Westminster Farmers Market. So yes, we looking forward to seeing. And I've seen you guys at the farmers market before. Are you? I remember watching. There was another hemp company or grower. I think they may have been in Frederick County. They came out to one of these like ag breakfast things that we used to do before COVID at Boggers, and they were talking about the challenge in keeping the THC levels down to where they don't have to then just destroy the whole crop. Maybe could you tell us more about the challenges associated with growing hemp to prevent it from being too high content? Because I imagine there's a balancing act, because you've got a certain amount of like THC content that you kind of want for some of the medicinal properties, right?
Correct. Yeah, and it's a little bit of an ongoing process. I mean, the regulators, they're all just figuring it out as well. So it's a little bit of a moving target, and there's so many unknowns. Basically, you have to keep it under 0.3% total THC, which is kind of a new metric. Before, it was just one part of the THC molecule, which I won't get too into the weeds of, but you have to be testing and monitoring throughout the growing season, and making sure that your plants aren't going hot over that threshold, because if they are, you have a chance to do a retest, but basically eventually if it's still testing over, you have to destroy your whole crop. And so you want to start, the best way to start is with a trusted seed source, and something that has been vetted as far as being at underneath those thresholds. Then you have to monitor throughout the growing season. And the challenge is, you obviously want to maximize the potential of a plant that you're growing, but as the CBD levels rise, so do the THC levels. So to maximize the CBD, you would have to let that rise as well. Now our plants have had a very good CBD to THC ratio, so we've been able to keep it underneath that threshold and get a pretty good return on the CBD results. But it is certainly a challenge. We haven't had any negative effects yet, but I know that now going forward, it's going to be a little bit more stringent. We're probably going to have to harvest a lot earlier going forward, which will just lower our yield.
And thank you for that response. Carrie Pierce from Flip Yours Fitness and Change Space says, I'll be reaching out to you to learn how my wellness store Change Space may be a fit for a wholesale account.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. You're actually on our list to talk to. So a friend of ours recommended Change Space not too long ago. So that's great. Please do.
Yeah, I got my wife a Change Space gift card over the holidays so she can use that to buy your products in their store.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, that's perfect. I mean, those are the kinds of like local communities, local community spots we want to partner with.
And then I think you may have already kind of answered this based on how you have to keep the THC levels down, but Russ Hammett from 1 Million Cups wants to know, do you just do hemp with dispensaries becoming more normal in Maryland and even Westminster? It seems like there might be an opportunity for other crops, winky face.
No, actually, there's not an opportunity. We actually, before we even started thinking about hemp, we were like, well, we should look into medicinal marijuana out here. And we started digging into it. It's almost impossible to get those licenses. There's only a certain amount. There were even fewer when we started this process. And you just have to have such a level of investment. I mean, you need millions of dollars to even be at the table talking about who they're giving these licenses out to. And to be honest, I'm glad we didn't go that route. This feels much more, to use an overused word, organic and doable on our scale, where we don't have to go out and look for investors. We can do it kind of in-house pretty much mostly. But and I think that it's a different kind of medicinal plant than the marijuana, the THC side, but it can be just as beneficial for certain people. Everyone's a little bit different, but yeah, I think that if in the future THC were to be legalized and the licenses were available, we might try to get into something like that, because it's a very similar plant how it's grown, at least outdoors. We're not doing any kind of indoor operation other than trying some starters early in the season. We have a very small indoor operation, but yeah, we want everything to be grown outdoors, which also leads to difficulties with keeping varieties kind of separated from one another as far as pollination goes and things like that. So it's much easier to control all that in an indoor space, and those are very expensive.
Mark Weingram is asking, in terms of sustainability, after extracting the CBD, what is the residual plant material left, and how is that used or reclaimed?
So we do the extraction. We partner with. Are you guys hearing that dog? Is that pretty loud?
It's okay. Yeah, we hear it.
As long as you can still hear me. So we partner with a lab in Cambridge in Maryland, and they do all of our extraction. It's a cold ethanol extraction process. So basically, you put a bunch of ethanol in a tube, it swashes around, you rinse it out, and then you're just left with the plant material that's kind of been spent. And we actually bring it back to our farm and compost it. So that's the extent of the flower material. Now we're just talking about the flower material. The stems and the stalks are a different animal. We've so far haven't been able to utilize them the way we would like to, but we've been chopping them up and using them as mulch. Essentially, we put them back on the fields.
And maybe that's a conversation for someone like Andrew Rose too, to figure out what other ag tech applications there are for that byproduct, like bricks and things. All right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's tons of opportunities there that have yet to be realized. It's just again, some of it is infrastructure, and some of it's just having the money and the time to dig into it.
if I'm not mistaken, I think I recall Andrew once telling me that they invest in everything except for hemp because of some of the issues related to banking and.
Oh my gosh, I mean, that's something we haven't even touched on. I won't get too far into it, but it has been a very big challenge to find financial institutions that will do business with us.
But maybe that's changed or has evolved since the last time I spoke with him about it. All right, Tamar from Economic Development is sharing information about Maryland Hemp Exchange. Thank goodness it's not the Maryland Health Exchange. Maryland Hemp Exchange marketing organization and their Facebook page, and we'll give you a transcript of this chat. Russ Hammett is following up on the question about CBD gummies. Any plan for having gummies as another way to get the oil in your body?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get that a lot, actually, especially at farmers markets. We've experimented with them, and we haven't found a good, stable option because we're not using any kind of preservatives or gummies. Gummies are one of those things that people don't look at the ingredients a lot of, but they're not always very clean, or like a lot of times you're finding gummies with high fructose corn syrup in them and all kinds of synthetic lecithin, and you're missing the point of the medicinal properties of CBD if you're just throwing it into whatever, so we're keeping our products as clean as possible, as simple as possible, and the gummies, even though we're still working it out. We would like to offer those because we do get that a lot, but so far our only options would have to be refrigerated and would have a very short shelf life, which we might just have to live with, which is fine.
So just to wrap up, is there anything else that the community here can do for you? Any other help that you need, or promotional help or whatever?
I think that just reaching out and coming in and visiting us. If you have questions, I think that we want to kind of help spread information about hemp and demystify the differences and the value of it over the world of marijuana and that it usually gets associated with. So I would say just ask questions, and we're always happy to share and and bring people in.
Well, with that, Ben, you and Mel both, I don't know if Mel's still on, but you guys get a ceramic 1 Million Cups mug for presenting today. So I'll get your information to get that to you. And of course, everybody else here, if you attend 5 or more of these in a row, you get one of these travel mugs. 10 or more in a row, you get a 1 Million Cups t-shirt. So everybody, we're at 10 o'clock. We like to just make sure we always finish this up on time so that everybody can get on to their next meetings at 10. Thank you very much. Thank you to Ben from Fiddlers Green Farm and from Mel from CitizenLife for presenting.
Thank you, Graham. Really appreciated the opportunity for putting this all on. It's awesome.
Our pleasure. And please join us next week. We're not exactly sure what we're doing next week yet. It might be a community discussion or it might be a presenter TBD, but we'll figure it out. But we'll still meet the same time next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Great week.